Okay, that leads us to our fireside chat. I'd like to welcome to the stage Luke Norman. He's the co-founder and chairman of U.S. Gold Corp. Luke, if you could follow me, we'll have a seat. So you can sit right here.
Thank you.
All right, well, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you everybody in the audience for attending. U.S. Gold Corp, fairly new company in the grand scheme of things. Shovel-ready permitted project, gold and copper in Wyoming. Maybe you could start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about the team.
Certainly, great idea. So again, my name's Luke Norman. I'm the executive chairman at U.S. Gold Corp. I'm also co-founder of the company. Our entire design was to go ahead, make a discovery, and bring it to production. So to do so, obviously you need people who know how to extract minerals from the ground, and our CEO is George B. That's his surname, that's not an initial, B-E-E. And George built most of Barrick's large production today. So again, I think we've got a pretty qualified individual at the helm. And yeah, we're going to go and continue to do what we've done from day dot, which is generate shareholder value.
You've got mining royalty on your team.
We
You've
do.
also got Bob Schaefer, right?
Yep,
Hunter
Robert
Dickinson.
Schaefer.
Yep.
HD, ex-chief of PDAC.
Yes, absolutely. And I noticed Joanna Fipke too.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
Dynasty there.
Very famous surnames.
So your stock's been doing very well in the past 52 weeks. You're up almost 3 times.
Yes.
You have a very tight share structure, and you're listed on NASDAQ, which, you know, for mining companies is a little bit of an odd duck, but clearly doing well for you.
Yeah, well, all of those points are pretty unique to a junior mining company. Tight share structure you don't hear too often anymore. By tight, we mean literally there's about 14 million shares outstanding on the company. So you can imagine we've all invested in TSX venture companies previously. And look, the reason why we went with NASDAQ is my previous company was a company by the name of Gold Standard Ventures. And myself and Jonathan Ord, who's the CEO, you know, we put in the hard slog and we worked the thing up from TSX ultimately onto the New York Stock Exchange. And by the time I finished my tenure at Gold Standard, you know, we were pushing 90% US-based shareholders. So with a US asset, I just figured, look, you know, why beat the middleman? Just get right onto the main exchange. So,
well done, very well done. Okay, well let's dig into the project, if you don't mind. It's the CK Gold project. It's in Wyoming. It's permitted and shovel ready. I've went through your summary, and you're on track to produce 110,000 plus ounces of gold equivalent, and that's gold and copper. So maybe you just want to tell us a little bit about the project, its feasibilities, you know, the capex,
absolutely,
net present value.
So first I'll caveat. So yeah, we will always be in that sort of 110,000 ounce per annum production range. What is not truly indicative of the deposit is the years of mine life. So we wanted to establish something that was going to be palatable for the public investment community, which is a minimum of 10 years of production, and from there see if we could actually permit it. Because another unique factoid about this project is it sits next to or abuts a state park in Wyoming. So, you know, these are kind of scary conversation topics. Now, fast forward to today, and we are fully permitted. That was never an issue through the permit process, but I could understand why investors might have had some concern about it. So where I'm going with this, there is a lot more upside to the deposit than the 10 years of mine life that's represented in our reserve report. But again, we established a reserve and then we followed a process. So, you know, in Wyoming, we're on state ground, and we are one of the only junior mining companies out there with a fully permitted shovel-ready project in North America. And the reason being is we didn't have to deal with any of the federal nexuses. So none of the US government agencies, and clearly in Canada we have the same issues, I want to say, backlogs of federal permit process. So a really, again, unique, I use the word a lot, and I apologize to everyone, but a really unique set of circumstances that allowed us, within a 4-year period, to take the science test of a project all the way through to, you know, what will soon be bankable, final feasibility, shovel-ready, fully permitted project.
And so I guess that comes with a lot of social license then. As you said, you dealt with the state, you ticked all the boxes, you have your permit. Maybe talk a little bit about the community, your relationship there.
Absolutely. Well, you got to imagine. So my accent's from New Zealand, even though I live here in Canada. My business partner, who's our CEO, has an English or British accent. You can imagine us showing up in the government halls of Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. It was going to be a challenge. So we were very fortunate enough to have, as a director at the time, talking of famed names on a board, we had Ryan Zinke, who was the previously Secretary of the Interior for the Trump administration 1.0. He was also the commander of SEAL Team 6 with some ungodly number of confirmed victims in his path. So when he picks up, yes, we'll leave it at operations. So when he picks up the phone and introduces us to local government people, etc., they answer and they listen. So we got very early, we got a chance to meet with all levels of government in state, and then we had a standalone website that was just for the community that would explain the method of processing, because we're not smelting on site, there's no cyanide. It's a very, very simple, clean type of mining operation, right down to resonance from blasting. All sorts of information was there. Air quality, how we're going to manage wastewater, where our water was coming from. I could go on for a long time here. But we were constantly updating the community, and then we'd do town hall sessions like this. We would have conversations with them, but ultimately on state ground. So we didn't have a lot of headwind. We just felt that, yes, social license is extremely important and when you're in a community-based project.
How long did it take to move through those steps?
Well, it would have been, they have very set guidelines. This is what I love about dealing on the state level versus the federal level. They have time frames. Within 12 months, they said, from us filing our permits, we would have a yay or nay. Now, we actually delayed the process because we added in an additional permit along the way, which is called an industrial sightings permit, which is kind of a give back to the community that allows them to put in infrastructure, bus stops if need be, hydrants for fire, whatever else. It allows them to deploy capital into that. So we completed an industrial sightings permit as well as our permits to mine. So I would say all in it took us around 2 years, which is still tremendously.
Oh, that's very fast.
Yeah.
Very, very fast.
Yeah. And look, they're just as stringent as any federal agency would have been, but we're dealing with people, boots on the ground, real people, 2 blocks away in their office, that if there was a question around something, the way we filed it, the way we completed it, they would pick up the phone and ask, not just go, all right, you got that wrong, back to the bottom.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've got a 10-year mine life, which you will extend.
Yes.
And but you're already thinking and focused on your environmental impact of the area and
Absolutely.
the benefits that you can bring through that impact, so positive impact when ultimately you decide to wrap up the operations and move on.
Again, isn't this a unique conversation? The positive impacts of a mine, you would think this is oxymoronic kind of discussion, but it's very true. So being abutted to the state park, which is Kirkgardie State Park, hosts 2 water supplies or reservoirs that are man-made, and they also host huge amounts of recreational sites around them. Now, like every township in the U.S., it's growing. Well, not every, but like most, it is a growing community, and they have more and more demand for water containment. Their plan is to increase the dam heights within the park to meet those future demands, a very expensive undertaking, but it also floods out all the recreational sites. So you can imagine the Parks Board are really concerned about that. They have a partnership with the local water supplier, and ultimately the water supply takes precedence. So we are going to have a minimum, based on the 10-year reserve, 86-acre by 700-foot deep hole. Now that would more than double the pre-existing, and basically by proxy become an extension to the park. So yeah, and I could go on, there's a slew of other benefits to this project, including our waste material that we've since uncovered, no pun, realize that there is a usage for that as an aggregate source. So there is just an array of positives around this project. It's quite exciting.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's the way to build a mine next to a park, the synergies that you can bring to the table to benefit the park itself. So let's just jump back into the numbers then, and timelines. When are you going to be in production?
So once we complete final feasibility, which will be end of third quarter this year or early fourth quarter, we are then geared up to go and take capital. Now, we're already receiving terms sheets from an array of different interested parties, from people who want to buy our concentrate to people who want to either stream or royalty, the typical offers of capital on very favorable terms. But our last step, is to take this through that final process, that bankable feasibility. Why? Because George, again, has successfully built gold mines all over the planet. He's doing things right, checking the boxes. From there, it would be an 18-month process. Again, I just want to reiterate something very important. We are shareholders, so we're aligned with our investor. Now, what does that mean? Word salad. What it actually means is we're very, very much motivated to minimize the dilution of the stock. And you can see that with 14 million shares out, that we're not going to just go haphazardly raise the 300 million or whatever the final number comes in at by diluting our equity. So we are taking into consideration large swaths of debt, which is what you want on a project that has such great economics.
Very robust.
Very robust economics. And look, copper and gold, I'm sure, we're here in Canada. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but in the US now, copper and gold have now joined the critical minerals list, which means the federal government have an active interest in supporting and helping promote copper and gold production within the US. Well, given that we are already permitted, there is opportunity now for us to talk to the feds, to talk to in-state government about very opportunistic loans, etc. There's grant money out there for US assets. So we're just taking our time. But again, just know that if you invest in a share of US Gold Corp, that we're very focused on minimizing dilution.
Well, that's fantastic. As you said, spoken by an owner to other owners of the company. Now, that's great. So your current numbers in terms of feasibility of the project, we're done at 2,100 gold.
Correct.
But I noticed that at 3,000 gold, those numbers double. Just about double.
Finally, a community where I can use this, hockey sticks.
Yes, yeah. Do you want to just go through the net present value of the project, IRR? I mean, the numbers are robust.
I will, but it does. It starts to get heady. I mean, we look at our base case. We're a conservative company. We want to be. We really want to know what's happening with this opportunity. There are other things we could have done, different mining processes we could have brought in that would have made it slightly more risky as to whether we get permitted. Well, just as with that, we've been very, very conservative with our approach towards, how this thing pays back. Why? Because we don't want to find ourselves in a whipsaw market where gold's correcting, copper's correcting, and people say, oh, that was a marginal asset. No way. So you'll see on our, if you go on site, to our website, and take a look at our presentation, you'll see a sensitivities table where we value it all the way down to $1,300 gold and sub $3 copper. How does this thing stand up? It still generates cash flow. So on the upside, gosh, if we started bringing in, we're SK 1300. Sorry, so the reporting protocols in the US are different than NI 43-101 in Canada. So we don't get to talk about inferred ounces, for example. But if we brought another 1 million ounces of gold mineralization below the pit, like as we envisage is there, you're talking about NPVs that are running well over the $1 billion mark. And we're $175 million market cap approximately today. So a lot of upside.
And under those standards, you're at 1.6 million ounces?
1.6 million ounces in reserve, correct.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
And the spread, because we talk gold equivalents, just for simplicity, the spread is about 70% of the economics right now in gold and 30% of the economics in copper.
Okay. So you mentioned $170 million market cap.
Yep.
That's US dollars?
Yes.
Yes. And where do you see that going in terms of value as you move towards production?
I can't answer those kinds of questions. Where's the stock price going? I don't know. I could and should imagine much higher. I can imagine that there's a lot of interested parties looking at a fully permitted, shovel-ready project like ours and thinking, shoot, we would like to bolt a project on like that right now. So I adamantly believe there is a heck of a lot more upside to the stock. And if any of you take a look, you'll see in our chart, it is a fundamentally driven accretion in terms of our value right now. Around the end of November last year, we announced that we had our final permit in hand. Early December, Eric Sprott and Terra and a few other interested parties became invested in the company because, basically a de-risked asset. And we continue to accrete higher, and you'll see there's days where we trade up and then we'll trade off abruptly. That's just the nature of being on a digital exchange like NASDAQ. So I guess where I'm going with this is you don't have to chase the stock. Be patient if you are considering an investment in our company, but ultimately we are heading higher.
Well, I can say it. I fully concur. I think you're in the perfect spot in terms of where you are vis-a-vis development and ultimate production. I also think from a market perspective, you're in the perfect spot for new shareholders to come into your company, because not only do we have growth in the undervaluing value of the metals, gold and copper, but also I think that we will correct as we transition into a bull market back to previous valuations, which on a P to NAV basis have dropped from 1.5 down to 0.5, which gives you a three times lift. Well, okay, sure. I'm keeping the math simple.
Okay.
So there's a built-in possibility for a 3 times lift, all things remaining the same. So fantastic. Look, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Luke, for joining us. Wonderful, and please go to U.S. Gold's website and enjoy the ride through to production. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.